Morning. Good morning to all, and good afternoon to some. We're so excited to have you back for our second day of the Human Trafficking Workshop, Trapped in Transit, sponsored by Wellesley Center for Women and the University Consortium for Liberia here in Atlanta, Georgia. We also want to say a very special thanks to our panelists for coming back. Some of you are coming back today as new panelists. Some are coming back, joining us from yesterday's workshop as participants. We had a very lively and robust discussion yesterday on human trafficking. Some very exciting speakers participated from both the travel and tourism side of the industry, the U.S. Embassy in Monrovia, the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, and other stakeholders and partners. Please let me welcome you again to our second day of the Human Trafficking Workshop. My name is Cynthia Blandford. I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Honorary Consul, Republic of Liberia here in Atlanta, Georgia, appointed by Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in 2009. And I'm now working with the new administration of His Excellency, President George Manneh Weah. I also serve as president and board chair of the University Consortium for Liberia, one of the stakeholders and partners in this human trafficking grant, along with Wellesley Center for Women. I serve as the president and board chair, and I'm excited that many of our board members have joined us today, including Dr. Cheryl Dozier, President Emeritus from Savannah State University, and others who may be on the webinar as well. So if you're following today's agenda, we do have a couple of adjustments. For those of you in Monrovia, you are aware that this is campaign season. And so as such, we were hoping that the Vice President, Her Excellency Jewel Howard Taylor, could join us to make remarks. She's in Bond County, so we're trying to get an understanding on whether or not she might be able to join us by phone or by some other measure during her visit in Bond County. If by chance she is able to join us, we will bring her in and make an interruption in the program. So please be on standby for that as well. The session for today, if you've got your agenda in front of you, I will be making official welcome, which I'm doing right now. I will also then introduce to you, please, Mr. Martin Hayes, who is the acting managing director of the Liberian Airport Authority. I will do that shortly. In session 2, which is our transportation partner presentation, we're very delighted that SM Brussels is going to bring remarks, Mr. Jory Hendricks. He will have a wonderful presentation on security, protection, etc., the emergency response discussion from the SM Brussels side. Then we'll have a short break at about 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our session 3 will be civil society change agents. We do know that unfortunately Deborah Richardson is not going to be able to join us, but we have also some delightful speakers, delightful speaker who will take her place at the top of the hour. For our session 4, trafficking research experts and group discussion, we have Laura Newman, Director, Rule of Law at the Carter Center. She will also bring her perspective, along with Lenny Benson, Distinguished Chair in Immigration and Human Rights Law from New York Law School. And then toward the end of the day, we'll also have His Excellency George S.W. Patton Sr., the Liberian Ambassador to the United States in Washington, D.C., and then we'll have closing remarks and wrap up and next steps. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking forward to your participation today. We also want to encourage you to participate in the chat box with your notes and comments. There's also a Q&A session. Put your comments in there as well. We'd like to have a lively discussion, hear from you, get your thoughts and views and any concerns that you have. This activity, this particular workshop is being recorded for future use and training. So for those who are not able to participate today, we will be sure to share this information with our stakeholders and partners moving forward. So again, we want to say a special thanks to the U.S. Embassy in Monrovia for their sponsorship and funding of this grant, and to our stakeholders and partners. Let us begin. I'm hoping, Mr. Hayes, we're getting ready to get started. I sent you a note. I hope that you're ready, because we are ready to get started as well. Mr. Hayes, are you with us? Can you unmute yourself, Mr. Hayes?
Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry. Mr. Hayes has sent a message that I don't know if he's on right now. I'm not sure. Let's see, is he?
I know he sent a note that he had an urgent early morning meeting, but he might join us. So if he's not available, I know we have a very, we have a good, I guess we have another expert coming in to give us some comments and feedback. So Laylee, maybe we'll get to Mr. Hayes when his meeting is over. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think he's here just yet. So I'm going to turn it over to Laylee. I think she has a surprise guest for us this morning.
Well, I do. Thank you very much, Honorable Blandford, for opening this morning's meeting, day 2 of our workshop. If your experience was anything like mine, yesterday was a fast-moving train filled with valuable information that all of us who care about trafficking will be able to use. So I'm thankful for those of you who are again returning today. And I also want to say welcome to those of you who are here for the first time today. As you know, the Wellesley Centers for Women, which is a women and gender focused research institute located at Wellesley College, which is a premier college for women in the greater Boston area in the United States. The Wellesley Centers for Women is a women and gender focused research institute that is collaborating on this effort to address the challenges of trafficking in Liberia. Those challenges include the sex trafficking, child trafficking, labor trafficking, and other forms of trafficking, all of which we care about and all of which we want to address. At the Wellesley Centers for Women, we are very honored to have a number of visiting scholars who bring their expertise. Often these are people who are luminaries in the world and want to spend a few years working on academic pursuits under our roof. So I would like to introduce one such person to you now, and that is Advocate Hawa Ibrahim. Hawa Ibrahim, JD, SJD, ML, is a highly awarded international human rights and Sharia law attorney with considerable academic and government experience, who is currently researching multidisciplinary and collaborative explorations of root causes of terrorism, including radicalization of youth, and building bridges of cooperation between religious and non-religious communities, with a strong focus on the role of women and gender in all of these processes. Counselor Ibrahim previously hosted 2 international working conferences called Mothers Without Borders, Steering Youth Away from Violent Extremism, at Radcliffe College of Harvard University, that brought together thinkers, advocates, activists, students, and dignitaries to address this highly consequential topic. Counselor Ibrahim is the president of the Peace Institute. She has over 15 years experience in human rights law. The founder and senior partner of the Aries law firm based in Abuja, she was personally responsible for saving 40 women sentenced to death by stoning. She's the author of Practicing Sharia Law, 7 Strategies for Achieving Justice in Sharia Courts, and also the Guide to Achieving Human Rights Objectives under Sharia Law for Judges and Attorneys in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. She also played a role in the freeing of the schoolgirls who were abducted by Boko Haram in Nigeria, and she has served on numerous presidential commissions in Nigeria. She has been an envoy for the UN and received awards from the EU, where she is a frequent speaker. She is a member of the Council of Human Rights of the International Bar Association. She's a visiting professor at the University of Rome and a much sought after speaker on human rights, especially related to gender, justice, and interfaith dialogue. So we are very proud to claim her as a visiting scholar at the Wellesley Centers for Women. And when I explained to her this morning that one of our speakers wasn't able to make it, she was willing to jump up and come share with us some of her reflections about problems relating to trafficking in Nigeria and in West Africa more generally. So Hawa, I'd like to welcome you.
Thank you so much. That is very kind and very generous introduction. Thank you for having me. What a pleasure. Laylee has said my work, but I will just focus this morning on discussing part of the conversation I had about trafficking, specifically when it comes to children. And I will focus a little bit on my work with the girls that were kidnapped by Boko Haram, and maybe on a broader scale, some of the work I did in Rome, in Italy, generally speaking, specifically in Rome with respect to trafficking of women and girls in the southern part of Nigeria into Italy. Now, I want to say three things just for us to interrogate a little bit more in the conversation. I don't know how the format is, whether there'll be Q&A, but I'll be focused more on trying to speak to what you want to know or what you want to hear. So I'll just make some few remarks, and hopefully by questions, I'll be able to answer a little bit more. And the first something I wanted to say is difference and reputation. In some of this issue of trafficking, especially when it comes to Boko Haram, and on a larger scale in the southern part of the country, is this issue of the difference between them and the reputation of that difference. My work with the girls that were initially kidnapped in 2014 in Chibok, the schoolgirls, it's a known thing globally, but two things that I found interesting is that archives we have locally has the ability to address some of these issues. However, we need some international collaboration to be able to address them on a bigger scale. Now, what is it that the archives, what are the archives we have locally, and what are some of these things we could emphasize and sort of enforce in our localities? I'll mention a few things that we did that was very helpful, is to understand the dynamic of the people and to understand and work within those parameters of those dynamics. Now, the moment you start going out, it could not bring as quick a result as possible. Now, speaking about dynamic, we had countries, about half a dozen countries that gave Nigeria drones, and they also gave us expertise to help in identifying where the girls that were kidnapped were, and ultimately were trafficked by some of the members of the Boko Haram. During those times, we would sit down on the round table. I was part of a presidential committee appointed by the president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, to help with the effort to rescue the girls. During those moments, we would sit down on a round table with the expert that came from those countries that gave us drone to analyze the drone capacity, what they are being able to get. And they would tell us, because we didn't make the drone, so they give us all the information. Something was not right inside of me. So right inside, I was thinking about what else could be an added value to this conversation. And something was a missing link. And while chewing over it, I felt I wanted to speak to the chairman of the Presidential Commission, who was General Sabu. And I told him I really wanted to see the leaders of the Boko Haram. So I'm just specific on what I was able to do with my local resources. And I was able to, through persistent, I was able to be allowed to go back to the maximum prison with the help of other officers to visit with leaders of Boko Haram that were arrested and kidnapped arrested and in the prison. Now, through conversation, I was able to understand from their first information report and from the officers that have arrested them who their parents were. And that is actually the beginning of Mothers Without Borders. And through their parent, we were able to go to through the first information report, we were able to get to their villages to speak to some of the parents and bring the parent to the prisons. And subsequently, through the conversation with the parent, we're able to understand a little bit more on how we could rescue the other girls from where they were. And that has to do with a local initiative within the prison and within the police and within the hunters and within the fishermen in the villages. And so these are things that from a distance, we don't see their values. But if we understand within some local parameters, there could be ways to address these issues with our archives that we have and we could use and utilize to be able to get some result. Moving forward, and I'll ask for Q&A because I want to be more specific. I'm talking now generally speaking. We were able, through this intervention, the earlier intervention we did with going to visit the mothers, using the soft powers of the mothers to be able to understand from their children who are in detention, some of the leaders, get some more ideas on how to go and rescue others. We rescued over 50 girls. But I want to say the bigger issue in this issue of trafficking of girls and kidnapping with respect to Boko Haram has to do with the situation of so much youth. And from the statistic, we understand over 70% of youth under the age of 25, actually between 25 and 35 in the northern part of Nigeria are not employed. And because they are not employed, they are exposed to antisocial behaviors, and part of it has been emphasized by religion and indoctrination. And partly that is how we have come out with some of the difficult situation we have with Boko Haram and the persistent kidnapping of girls and children, and now even older people. So unless we address from a bigger angle globally, this issue, globally, yes, but also within the country, the issue of employment of youth and bringing women and mothers on the table to be able to find solution on a longer term, I think our progress will be slow and will be touted by the lack of inclusiveness of the soft power of the mother. And lastly, I will say a little bit of thing about my work with the trafficking in Italy. In Italy, the situation is totally different. And Luca, who is a veteran reporter, and I had worked on issues of trafficking. And I started this working of trafficking because I myself had been arrested at the airport and kept in detention for about 6 hours. I was a lawyer, I'm still a lawyer, and I took issues with it. And that was when I married my husband in 1993. And so that was my interest then to go into understanding this issue of trafficking. Over the couple of decades, the Italian government has relied on some of the work I have done and has invited me several, especially the foreign ministry, to address this issue of trafficking of girls. There are many levels to that, and I'm not sure this is the right time to sort of put so much on you. Actually, in Q&A, if you want specific, I'm happy to speak to it. But 3 things I would say with respect to trafficking of on a global stage of the Nigerian girls into Italy and into prostitution. The first is that it's sort of like a mafia operation. So it has nexus in different corners. So it's not easy to put your fingers on it to want to stop it per se, because there are some bigger forces behind it. So it's beyond a local initiative of getting the girls. But of course, the second one, there's local initiative. During my investigation back in Nigeria, I understood that part of the difficulties is also that some religious organizations are part of those girls coming to help them get work in Italy. And I'm sure you know all the other stories of how it goes about. So addressing it from interfaith, from religious perspective could be another way of looking at how to slow down this trafficking on another scale. So beyond pointing fingers, and that is why I want to end, beyond just pointing fingers, beyond suggesting the secrecy of it, I think there must be a sort of some transparent, it's an open-ended question as to how to get it done. And I want to say that how to should be inclusive of what we have as an archive and some sort of things that we've been doing that has worked for us in the past. It's an open-ended question. And I would invite, if there is a moment for people that have 1 or 2 questions, I can address it specifically. But I will end by saying it goes back to what I said earlier about the issue of difference and repetition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hawa. Those were some really powerful remarks, particularly given that you gave us the honor of showing up within an hour of the time that I asked you. But I knew the power of the stories that you had to tell, because obviously we've talked about many of these things before. And I want to reiterate some of the most important points that you made, because I think they're really germane to this conversation, and they connect to some of the points that were made yesterday by some of the speakers. One of the things that I really love that you emphasized is how addressing trafficking has to be a collaboration between the local and the global, because while there are very local specific aspects of the problem and aspects of the solution, importantly, you also have to think about larger global forces that are shaping the local environment and making trafficking even come into being. So, I think one of the things that we really tried to emphasize yesterday, although we didn't get as much into it then as we are right now, is the importance of thinking about trafficking within culturally specific context. There can't be a one size fits all. Even though we can learn from, for example, the ways it's dealt with in the United States, we can't necessarily use all of the United States strategies and solutions in the West African context. One of the things about the West African context that you brought up that I really hope everybody took home as a point is the importance of mothers in problem solving. The fact that the light bulb went off for you, and we said, if we go talk to the mothers of these guys who kidnapped these girls, then we're going to have a different angle for solving the problem than we will have from some of the other strategies. Obviously, the drones were important. They helped you search the forest, but you knew to also go ask the hunters and the fishermen who knew that forest like the back of their hand to help you look. And so those kind of solutions are very local, but they're also very culturally specific. And they remind us how important it is to honor local knowledge, honor local genius, honor local skill, and to bring everyone to the table. Even people that on the surface might not seem like they're going to be experts actually are often the ones who hold the key. I think also the point that you made about thinking about the situation of youth around the world. We know that in Africa, there is what is sometimes called a youth bulge, but that's actually becoming a factor all over the world. We do have more youth proportionally in the population right now than we've had at pretty much any other time in history. And we have the concern about what these youth are doing. Are they being adequately educated? Do they have employment? Are they in a position to have a strong network of family relationships, friend relationships, and what kind of guidance are they getting about how to live life? Those things also influence whether trafficking is going to emerge and what the resources are going to be to deal with that. So I appreciate you for bringing all of those things to our attention. It's interesting because when my student assistants were doing research related to trafficking in West Africa in preparation for this event, one of the interesting things that they found in one of the research articles is that geography actually does play a role in trafficking. And you mentioned the situation of the forest. We know that the girls were hidden in the forest in northern Nigeria, but dense forests as well as long coastlines have been found to be associated with trafficking in other areas where people can surreptitiously carry people without being discovered plays a role in trafficking. So we have to think about where are those areas where unobserved movement of people is possible and figure that into our strategies about how we address trafficking. So it was very interesting to me that you brought that up. I'm wondering whether anyone in the audience or amongst the other panelists has any questions for Hawa, because she is an incredible resource and I know that she can't stay with us for the full day. So if anyone has a question that they would like to ask her, you can either put it in the Q&A box or you can raise your hand and be recognized. So, and Cynthia, you too may have thoughts or questions in response to Hawa's presentation.
Thank you, Layli. I just want to say a special thank you to Ms. Ibrahim for taking the time out of your very busy schedule. Across the world, we have watched the issue take fold in Nigeria, and your leadership has just been outstanding. And so some of the lessons learned, I know that this was a short notice for you, but I'm certain that under Laylee's leadership, we'll have another opportunity to hear from you and to look at some other best practices to ensure all, of our, unfortunately, our emerging economies, some of our frail and fragile countries are also, perhaps vulnerable to these kinds of things even happening in countries like Liberia and other places. So we do want to learn from you and understand these issues so that we can prepare ourselves, for anything that might be coming our way. We understand that the issues are tough and difficult, but I think it's better for us to be prepared in the event that some unfortunate situation happens. So it's almost like you see something, say something. This is now be prepared if anything might come our way. So I do appreciate your leadership because this is information sharing. I don't think if we had not had you on today, many of us may not have thought about Boko Haram and how it impacts young women and girls and the threat for these young women and girls and how that whole issue of security and safety, how do we then, understand it and then be prepared for these issues that may come forward. We pray not, but it's better to be prepared than not. Thank you so much for your leadership in this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I think that it's also important to note that in this particular instance, we probably focused more on the abduction and the kidnapping aspects of what happened to the Chibok schoolgirls, but we have to also think about how places where child marriage is normalized is associated with trafficking, because to take a girl away for a child marriage is a form of trafficking. So we have to realize that working on child marriage as an issue is also a way to help end trafficking. All right, I understand that we have a question from the Carter Center. So I'm wondering if our Carter Center guests could be spotlighted to ask their question. I know that they have to be given the ability to unmute. So we'll hear from them as soon as we're able to put them on spotlight.
Eric? Eric?
They can chat now. They just have to unmute themselves.
Okay. Laura, if you can unmute yourself, you're given access. There you are. Go ahead.
It's actually not me. It's the team in Monrovia, where we have some incredible civil society leaders joining us. So they've unmuted themselves.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead. Please introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Yes, I'm Attorney Joseph Cheeseman from the Carter Center.
Welcome.
Liberia, thanks for your splendid brief information. My question is, you talked about the involvement of the mothers in your attempt to rescue the girls. How much impact did the mothers make in your attempt to rescue these girls?
So I will try to answer you by giving you an exact example of what we did. So I was appointed in this presidential panel by the former president, and I was appointed as one of 27 members. Now, I'm here in Boston, and I was invited, I was at Harvard. So I guess that itself carries with it some kind of place in the society in terms of the fact that I was independent. I didn't lobby to get appointed. So it means I have a total independence in what I wanted to do on the panel. We were there in the commission, we were there for about 8 months. And so that independence was important. And I want to say this, and I don't know from which angle you are working, but even we do human rights work or any other work, that level of independence is extremely necessary so that we can think re-strategize as much as we can. So that was for me a good freedom to enter. I didn't have anything around me. And so when I felt that there was need for us to look beyond what we are doing on a daily basis, understanding what the drone information is, giving us information, the Interpol telling us a lot of issues. And I was like, it's fabulous. But in my intuition, there was something right in my guts that was not right. I didn't just there's something that was going on. And so it was at that moment I approached the chair. And when I spoke to him, he was like, he doesn't think it's a good idea for me to go back to the prison. We have already seen the inmates and we should be done by it. He doesn't really think it's a good idea. I insisted, and at some point he was like, okay, if you want to do this, I will not be responsible because it's not part of our terms of reference. So it was based on that I decided to bulge out, and I'm not suggesting we should do this. I have a crazy life, and so don't take it that literally to do what I have done. So be within your comfort level. So I was, before then, I was a prosecutor in the Ministry of Justice for 8 years. But before I was a prosecutor, I was a police officer. And so in the police, I had colleagues. When I went to police college, I had colleagues that now have commissioner in the state that we were doing this case. So it was easy for me to pick my phone and call my colleague and say, I need a cover. I want to do this. I want to do that. So with the help of these colleagues I have in the state of Borno, and also my mother is from that state, I was able to go back to the prison. And as a prosecutor, I know that we will have any person that comes to any detention facility will have an information, and we call it FIR, First Information Report. So it was through those first information report that I gathered some information about those inmates. I didn't see the inmate, I just gathered information based on the FIR. And it was based on those information, I decided that I wanted to go to the villages and speak with the mothers. I just want to do it. It wasn't convenient because there was a lot of risk attached to it. And the process, I won't go into it, but we went to the village. Now, Lily spoke about understanding global things from a local lens. And when you get to the village, I'm sure in Liberia, you may have experienced some of it, it's important to deal with the structure of the village. And part of the structure of this village is the chief, his council. And so you don't just pop into a village and appear to want to help them. They know what their helps, they know where it is itching them. So it's good for us to understand that they know better than we do and follow the protocols. So that's what I did. I went to the village head. We came, of course, with the security people who respected their protocol. We were introduced to the mothers. So we met about 4 of them. We met more, but we brought 4 with us, and I'll speak about the 4. So those 4 mothers that we met, we had a conversation with them, like the normal conversation for the most part, without raising any issue with respect to children that were missing. So in the conversation about family and who I am, what I'm doing, I hadn't introduced myself properly. They didn't tell you. I became educated myself by accident. I became a lawyer by accident. I came to teach at Harvard by accident. So I knew where I'm coming from. I came from a very remote village. So I could relate very exactly to the villages I was. It's easier for me to relate. And so we would sit and talk normal, talking about family. And it turns out that they are the one that suggested that their children have died because they have not seen the children in years. And at this moment, it was about 3 years or so. So subsequently, we were able to see how we could speak to them to come with us to the town for 2 days. So the city is Maiduguri, and the villages are somewhere remote part of the state, about 3-4 hours. They came with us, they stayed with me in a hotel. The following day, we went to the prison. They didn't know where we were going to. We went to the prison. We are in the 2IC, this officer, second officer in command office. The men usually sit on the chair and we women sit on the floor on the mat. So we were sitting, and then I have already arranged that one of the leaders should come. Now you have to understand, maybe you understand it better from Liberia. When a young man is aged, when he's about 10 or so, they will tell you, now you are going to be the man of the family, you are going to take over so you don't hug women. So that's part of the thing we have there. So this young man that came out from his prison room, locked up, and he was approaching the 2IC office with an officer. About some feet away, he noticed somebody that looks like his mother. Now he must be about 25, 28. He rushed to this lady. He fell on her and he hugged her. He hugged her so tightly and he started just crying and weeping. And there was shock because the mother didn't know that her son was alive. This whole situation was unfolding and she was crying and we all joined in the cry. And she said 3 words, just 3 words, Meya Faru in Hausa. In essence, is what went so wrong. And that is when this young man decided to start just speaking. He just spoke. Now, in this detention, he had been tortured. In some of our camps, in some of our police detention, you know what torture means. When you talk about Guantanamo Bay or Abu Ghraib is something else, but some of our torture could be terrible. So he had been tortured, this young man. He has not said a word. When the mother asked him, Meya Faru, what went so wrong? He just burst, and everybody was looking for their tape recorder or their phone to record what he was saying. And from there, we got some substantial information. And I said earlier, and Lady said it even better, that there is that soft power that is beyond the power of the drone, that is beyond the power of the Apache helicopters and the tanks that we could employ. And I guess that 3 words was the game changer. And for me, this is where the power of the mother lies. And I'm working on the phenomenology of the soft power of mothers. I have written an article on it, and I'm hoping to discuss it in due course. But I could see in every single step that we move, either we are talking about trafficking, we are talking about illegal child marriage, which I'm a victim. There is something about that soft power of mothers that if we bring it to the table, it could play a massive role to shift dynamics. And I hope that beyond our conversation here, that we look at those corners where those soft power exist and we employ them so that we can live a world better than we find it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hawa. That was a very powerful answer to that question. But again, I hope that it's really driving home in everyone's minds that as we work on trafficking in Liberia, there's a host of resources that we may not have brought to bear on the issue. And, you know, no matter what people engage in life, they still love their mothers and their mothers still love them. And recognizing that that's a power for social change is what your story has brought to light. So thank you so much for sharing those details. That's incredibly powerful. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask Hawa before she departs this morning?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Hawa, you're free to stay for the entire workshop, but I know you have other plans. So any other questions?
Yeah.
I hear someone maybe coming forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead, introduce yourself, please, and ask your question.
Where I'm Hello. Go ahead.
Hi, we're having a hard time hearing you. Could you get a little bit closer to your microphone?
Now, actually, happy to be a part of this great presentation.
Is there another person coming forward from the Carter Center gathering?
We We can't hear. Can you repeat what was being asked?
I was asking whether there's another person coming forward to ask a question from the Carter Center group. I heard some murmur, but I couldn't tell.
All right.
I believe there is. Let's-
Okay, thank you. Yes, sure. The person can come forward, introduce themselves and ask their question. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm. My concern is what?
For some reason, we're unable to hear you. I'm sorry. Is it possible to type your question into the Q&A box?
So apologies, we have a lot of people in our offices to hear this important workshop. Sa, can you repeat the question? We can't hear you. But it sounds, we can hear you, but we
Okay.
can hear the question.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
You hear me?
yes.
Okay, so I was asking the team to speak, but speak louder and get to the point.
Okay. You need to stay very close to the microphone. So we can only hear you if you stay close. So once again, I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Yes, you need to stay very close to the microphone next to that computer. No, we're not getting you. Colleagues,
Hello?
yes, you have to stay very, very close to the microphone. Do not move from where you are.
Well, my question is the motivation. I want to know what motivated her having gotten the appointment by the president to see how best she can work alongside all of the officials to making sure that they rescue those girls that was being kidnapped. How did she gain her motivation to do such work?
My motivation has to do with my upbringing. I was saying that I grew up in a very small village. Maybe in Liberia, you may have people that hawk, they put things in their head and they sell. So I sold everything that was sellable. I sold from vegetables to the pap that you sell, to fruits. Anything that is sellable, I sold. So that was where I came from. I was a seller I was hawking things, buying and selling. By the age of 10, I was giving out in marriage. So when you talk about girls' marriage, like I said, I was also like a victim. So my background itself spells out my motivation. And I have always thought about giving back what I was given. I wasn't allowed to go, I was supposed to go to school, so I ran away to go to school. So there are many layers that keep peeling as I move on in life, and then ended up to teach at Harvard was like a cherry on the ice, on the cake. And over all these years, it's always been how I will give back. So whatever our motivation is, and I don't know what you are working on, we find something. And it's, for me, I think it's at times necessary to leave it better than we find it, wherever we find ourselves. So my motivation is driven inside. I don't take money. When I was doing those cases, I don't take funding because it was a big issue, especially my earlier cases, saving women lives that have been sentenced to stone by death, stoned to death by stoning. It's necessary to know what dynamic you work in. And my book, The 7th Strategy on How to Practice in Sharia Court, I sort of interrogated the question as what is our dynamic and how do we work within our dynamic? What is our focus and how do we stay focused? How do we look at things from a global angle, but yet try to see how we can interpret it within our local circumstances? How do we always have a plan, a backup, a fallback, an exit strategy? So these are some of the things that I try to imbibe in my work. And I refuse to get engaged with, you don't pull me into your issues. And we always have so much around to do. We can only do as much. And if we refuse to join issues with people that have issues also, and we focus on our issues, it helps us. So the ability overall to pay attention to detail, but yet stay focused. I remember during some of our cases, I was asked, what do you think about West versus Islam? Or what do you think about clash of civilization? This was not the issue I was working on. This was not my issue. I'm not there to discuss about West versus Islam, the clash of civilization. I had a woman sentenced to death by stoning and I want to save her life. That was my focus. That was my issue. That is where I want to address what I want to address. So the ability for us as we look at motivation to also see our situation and to work within those local dynamics, I think will also be helpful. But let me end by also problematizing the problem by saying that things have shifted from 10, 15, 20 years ago when I did the work I did and now, and the work we are continuing. Now we have the social media. And I'm sure as you address this issue of trafficking, one of the things I'm positive, I have not seen the agenda. Like Layli said, I just came in 30 minutes before I was told 30 minutes, I just jumped into this conversation. So I have not seen anything yet that you have done. But looking at the artificial intelligence, the algorithm, the social media, in order to redefine the knowledge without borders is extremely important. Whatever we are going to do will be determined by a lot of information that goes around us. And so the ability for us to think 2 steps ahead of some of this gadget we hold. Why will my camera has 3, my phone has 3 cameras? What surveillance am I under? What information, what data has been extracted? How can we translate that into our work on a daily basis and make sure that we are 1 step ahead? How can we not be the problem of our own problems? And I think a bigger picture, I'll just throw it out there. It's just something for us to chew through as the day continues. I actually am on my way to Rome. I have a flight in about 2 hours. I have to be at the airport in about 2 hours. My flight is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to continue the conversation on a different level. And I hope that beyond the color of our skins, beyond our orientation, either male or female, whether we are poor or rich, beyond all our things that drag us, there is a powerful force that unites us. And that is our human dignity. That is our humanity. And every work we do goes around that dignity. As long as we live, we have the strength to do it. We should not waver and we should move on. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Layli, for having me on. And it's just a pleasure to share some thoughts and to also be blessed by your presence. Thank you so much. Shalom.
Thank you. Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you, Hawa. We've truly been blessed by your presence. And I know that you're, in the larger scheme of things, a partner in this work with us and us with you. So thank you. And we wish you the best on your flights today. Understand that you need to go. And we will catch up again when you come back. Thank you so much for being part of this program today.